This guy was lucky enough to inherit a 100-year-old house. He spent 2 years working with his own hands, building panoramic lofts, rooftop gardens, doomsday bunkers, special security systems, and refurbishing the dump into a 5-star home in the woods. On his first day inheriting his grandpa's house, Paul found it in worse shape than expected: cracked walls, garbage, and no sunlight. But at least he got a big piece of land. To assess the old house, Paul cleared out the yard of weeds and junk, then climbed into the attic. The attic was dark, so Paul tore down a gable wall, clearing out old letters, newspapers, and vintage records. Paul set up a ladder and started removing the chimney and beams on the roof. The attic chimney was so loose he could pull it apart with his hands. Clearing the second floor floorboards was easy, but under them, there was a mess of straw and dirt, full of dust and mites. After bagging tons of it, the real work could begin. Paul went out and bought a lot of square timber. He used a circular saw to cut grooves at each end and carried them upstairs to reinforce the attic frame. Paul planned to turn this area into a bedroom with a panoramic skylight and some plants. To make it happen, he needed to remove part of the roof. He reinforced the frame first, cut the rafters, and then took the roof down. After removing one side of the roof, Paul still had the other side to deal with. Even a heavy snowfall didn't slow his progress. Paul reinforced the roof by welding steel pipes to the main beams. After that, the team removed the tiles and boards, swapped the old rafters for fresh timber, added new support beams, and laid the first layer of plywood and waterproof fabric. Instead of expensive skylights, the team chose small glass panes, which were more cost-effective than easier to install. They placed the glass into the frame, sealed the edges with silicone, and the attic, once dark and cramped, now felt open and airy. Paul planned to replace the removed gable wall with a large panoramic window. But before that, he needed to reinforce the foundation to ensure stability. The next day, Paul bought sand and a mixer, then hauled a full load of stones from a nearby field. Next, Paul created a mold for the foundation using waterproof fabric, filling it with concrete and rebar to enhance the foundation's stability, ensuring that the demolition could proceed without worries. To improve lighting on the first floor, Paul decided to tear down the entire rear wall. Once it collapsed, he secured the mold into place, laid a full layer of stones, then filled it with concrete and rebar to create a solid foundation that would last a century. Paul took down the remaining wall on the second floor. Since this was his forever home, he wanted a fresh start. Paul planned to extend the cabin backward, adding a porch. He joined beams with polyurethane glue and screws, coating the ground parts with tar to prevent rot. The new extension is not intended for living, but is a terrace with beautiful views. Paul used carefully selected timbers for the roof, built the floor joists and fixed the rafters in place. The next day, Paul went to a lumber mill for rot-proof wood. It was expensive, but the scraps were cheap. By trimming off the flaws, they were as good as new. Then, the wood were secured to the terrace. It was rough, but after sanding into coats of varnish they looked great. Paul planned to plant grass on the roof, so he added metal strips for support. To properly waterproof and conserve water in the roof garden, Paul installed a liner to conserve moisture and protect the roof. The uneven surface retains moisture for the lawn and prevents plant roots from damaging the roof. He then added pre-welded framing to prevent soil erosion, sprinkled in grass seed, and watered it to wait for it to grow. The roof is entirely covered with insulated panels. The insulation boards are covered with keel and plywood to create an air barrier. For aesthetic reasons, Paul chose to use preserved wood. The fish scale pattern helps rainwater run off, and the different lengths of boards give the roof a natural look. With the roof done, Paul moved inside. He cleared out old partitions and furniture. Since the chimney was gone, he removed the stove, which was no longer needed. He saved good quality bricks to reuse later and cut costs. The next morning, Paul dug a pit for the septic tank. Its 1,000-liter capacity would last for years. The old windows didn't look great, and the first floor lacked light, so Paul decided to replace them with large picture windows. The process was simple: remove the center divider, install custom frames, and fit tempered glass, giving the cabin a modern touch. The house was in need of a thorough cleaning. Years of neglect had turned the 100-year-old house into a haven for critters. Paul discovered an old cellar built, sparking the idea of creating a secret bunker. After all, what boy wouldn't want a secret hideout? Since heavy machinery couldn't fit in the cellar, they dug by hand. They marked the area with boards, then excavated layer by layer, adding support boards every 10 centimeters to prevent collapse. Once the 3-meter wooden walls were in place, they lined the area with waterproof sheets, installed ventilation pipes, and prepared to pour concrete. The sand dug up was used to level the ground, but first, they moistened the surface to prevent dust when compacting. Next, they cut insulation mats into the shape of foundation stones, laid waterproof fabric, added rebar and stone dust, and smoothed the surface with a grinder. Once the ground dried, they removed the molds. Paul first created a model to design the staircase. He welded rotating steps to steel pipes, then built a wooden frame. After assembling it, his friends helped transport it to the cabin, where they put it together. At first glance, it looks like a normal staircase, but hidden inside is a trapdoor leading to the cellar next door. The team dug by hand again, cleared the walls and sand, and poured reinforced concrete around the walls. This space could serve as a wine cellar or a walk-in closet, with an invisible door connecting the rooms. After finishing the ceiling, they laid floor tiles directly. To add a more sophisticated touch, Paul used technology to bring his ideas to life. He quickly got a futuristic model from the software, then used a machine to cut the wood precisely, painted it by hand. He added LED strips to enhance the ambience. After fixing the hinges, the secret door was complete. This bunker makes you want to stay in every day. While the bunker was nearly finished, it was still far from livable, so Paul began chiseling grooves into the floor to support the load-bearing beams. With these beams in place, he could secure the rafters. To ensure proper airflow in the attic, Paul needed to remove the wall. To maintain stability, he first built a new wooden frame before safely starting the demolition. Paul added insulation and covered the floor with plywood to prepare for the flooring installation. The planks were small and tricky, but the result was worth it. After the floor was finished, Paul polished it with a sander, giving the house a fresh look. When the custom windows arrived, he shaped the frames by machine, sprayed them black, and installed elegant window grills. The attic was almost finished, with only the ceiling left. Throughout the 6-month renovation, Paul didn't hire any workers. He always had his friends help out whenever possible. Paul was going to make a desk. He shaped the walnut planks on a lathe, removed the bark, applied epoxy and sanded. After applying wood wax oil, the grain improved significantly. Once mounted on the windowsill, Paul was able to work while enjoying the beautiful forest view, which is a great way to relax. Meanwhile, the ground floor was nearly set. To create the bathroom area, Paul needed to rebuild some walls. He cleaned the leftover bricks, then used cement to set them along the marked lines. After finishing the bathroom partitions, Paul nailed in supports to help install the ceiling later. To reduce weight, he chose lighter wood panels, measured and cut them, then reassembled them. He used white glue to press the panels into place, enhancing the wood's value. After applying dark wood wax oil, the texture was preserved and made more durable. The beams followed the same process, spray-painted dark gray to match the green ceiling. To stick to his budget, Paul chose floor planks with internal cracks. He applied the puzzle method, calculating the shape of each piece and numbering them for easy installation. Despite the odd shapes, they came together seamlessly. It's hard to believe he doesn't have a perfectionist streak. For the kitchen, where stains are harder to clean, he covered the area with marble resembling steel plates. After finishing the grout work around the corners, the hard insulation was nearly complete. The cracked floorboards were filled with epoxy resin, and the process of filling, sanding, and patching took several attempts before they looked right. After that, the wall panels were fixed. To live here long-term, Paul needed to solve the water supply issue. Luckily, there was plenty of underground water, and with the help of a drilling team, he was able to access fresh water after 2.5 days of drilling. However, the house, a century-old inheritance, was outdated when it came to insulation and moisture-proofing. To make it livable, Paul installed insulation boards on the exterior walls. Given the region's rainy season, he also laid moisture-resistant mats at the corners. For aesthetic reasons, half of the front wall was covered with wood boards and spray-painted black to enhance durability and give the wall a sleek look. The rest of the roof and walls were sealed tightly with wall panels, ensuring the house would last for generations to come. Paul installed gutters along the eaves to direct rainwater. He then cut intricate patterns into steel plates and fixed light strips to the exterior. Once the plates were added, the oxidized steel perfectly matched the wood. At night, the lights brought it all together. Being a private base, it was always undesirable to be disturbed by strangers. Dug a pit, built supports and welded beams. He also installed pipes and lighting. When someone approaches, the gate triggers a water screen that drenches the uninvited person and looks cooler at night. Paul designed a special security system at the entrance. After 2 years of remodeling, Paul has turned a nearly collapsed house into his dream home. He will enjoy a 5-star home life in the forest, away from the hustle and bustle of the city.